I'm here with Dean Billings, and Dean is running for school trustee in the city of Richmond. Dean, would you like to introduce yourself and tell the viewers a little bit about you and why you're running for school trustee?
Sure. So I'm Dean Billings. I've been living in Richmond for about 10 years. I've got 2 kids in primary school education in Richmond. I've been living here with my wife. I'm running for a number of reasons. I've been watching the school board, obviously, with an interest to primary care or primary school. And I've been watching the board, reading their strategic plans, kind of paying attention to a couple of other districts as well, and looking at some emerging issues. And I saw a few things that I was concerned about their priorities and sort of the way they were making decisions. And so I decided to run. It seemed like there's a couple things that the board, I thought they could have pushed back on that was a bit too much of a bit of a social club kind of atmosphere at the board. There's one particular issue that I am talking to lots of folks about, and that's the issue of gender affirming care. So I think that's actually a bit of a misnomer. I think it's better called, I guess, a medication or drugs first approach to dealing with kids with gender dysphoria. It's mostly within the medical system, but the education system does have a big part in that. So just to preface that a bit, I understand, getting people into the 21st century and teaching against hate and inclusion and so on. That's definitely an important thing, and bring, it's a real thing, and I respect that. At the same time, I think we're presiding over a medical scandal. I think that people are not enough aware of this significant increase in the number of kids identifying as trans and non-binary, and then also that kids can consent to gender affirming care, so puberty blockers, at age 12 without the knowledge or awareness of their parents, and that the data is kind of racking up on the long-term consequences of some of this stuff. So Sweden and Finland have reverted back to what you could call the conservative approach, or the therapy and counseling approach first. We're still kind of following the United States in that regard. And it kind of starts in school. I had submitted a question to the board in June on this topic because the DEI survey, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion survey that was done, I think it started out in 2021. Mm-hmm. It was a big deal. Took a while. It struck me that 7.7% of high schoolers identify as trans and non-binary. Now, there could be selection bias, all kinds of other stuff. In 2016, the BC government number for that was 1%. So it's gone from 1% to 7.7%. That seemed to me to be something to look into. Mm-hmm. I think because there's so much focus on promoting inclusion and tolerance and so on, which is significantly important, it kind of oversimplifies the discussion, I think. And I think the school district needs to be explicit with what it's doing. I think not enough parents, first of all, understand the consequences of puberty blockers, and understand that if a kid socially transitions in the school system will not tell you. And so that's a big part of why I kind of just decided to run.
That's a big topic. What is your background? We're drifting away here a little bit, but what is your background that supports your interest and passion for this? My
interest is, I'm a software project manager, and I guess interested in, I think about the data that government systems have a lot, right? So it started with my request to just have a count of how many kids have been socially transitioned. And so that's different from, I guess, the principle of not outing kids to their parents. That's important, and I think we can preserve that. But what we're going further with is we can't even know how often that happens. And so looking up some of the data in terms of how many kids get socially transitioned, how many are taking puberty blockers, some of this stuff, all along the way, a lot of this data is withheld or systematically not recorded. And so that's the part that I was interested in. Also, some of the procurement stuff that the board is doing, particularly around DEI, I think the rigor of that is not what it could be, and I think that whole industry needs to mature a bit, and that could be, I guess, the way that we all move forward. Instead of, there's a lot of just some name calling in this. Like you say, it's a big discussion, right? Big topic.
It is.
And some of the discourse is not very nuanced all the time.
But how do we educate? I'm curious. How do we educate the public, the parents, if you say this can happen without the parents even knowing about it, I'm curious as to how we can fix that or have a solution for that.
I think so. One would be like a waiver, like when you take your kid on a field trip, or even when you buy a coffee. There's sometimes ridiculous warning labels and so on that it's hot. Maybe something informing parents, new kindergarten teachers, or parents of kindergarten, that by the time second grade comes around, there could be a bunch of kids identifying as trans, and the school could have known about that for a while. I think parents should be regularly reminded of that in an explicit way. Some of the language, I think the goal, so it's difficult, and I think I understand why we've gotten to the point we are, because caring for a population that's at a higher risk of suicide is definitely a priority. Some of the language is so affirming that I think it doesn't make it explicit what some of the things that either the school system can do or what can happen down the line. So that's the keeping better data, which is what I had asked for initially, and letting parents know on a regular basis what's happening.
Wow, you just blow me away with this. I mean, these questions are
Have you been to
secondary.
Richmond?
No, not at all. It's just they're secondary, which I did ask everybody. I can quickly, diversity inclusion is kind of drawn into what you're trying to get across here, but this is so in depth. I'd like to hear more about it. I hope that somewhere along the line that you're able to share this, whether it's becoming a school trustee. Good for you for caring enough to be able to take it to that level. I respect you for having your opinions and wanting to be a solution and not ignoring what's going on, because I wonder how many parents are really aware of these facts.
Yeah, I'd say that it's the state right now is plural anecdotes. There's a lot of anecdotes. There was a father in Delta who had a really hard time with how his daughter went through this, and he was eventually put in jail for disagreeing with this situation. There's a couple of trustees in BC and Ontario with similar kinds of concerns about what's going on here.
Dean, thank you so much for being here today, and I appreciate these questions. You've covered a whole different area, which I think is really important. Before we close, one word. Why should the viewers vote for Dean Billings?
One word. I studied up on this and I still didn't get tenacious.
Hey, that's a good word.
Okay.
Haven't had that one today.
Good.
Good for you. Well, again, thank you, Dean, for being here today. All the very best on October 15th, and we wish you well in your campaign.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.